card shuffle project is one in which we will use arrays. I actually used, I think, 5 different arrays in programming this, 3 class level and 2 local. The class level arrays allow me to click the shuffle button and display a card in each of the 52 labels that are depicted here. Each card is only shown once and every card is shown. I use a Boolean array to keep track of the cards as they are being doled out into my shuffled deck. An object array of all the labels, which makes it easy then to iterate through all of the labels to display the cards. And of course, an integer array to show the image index numbers as they correlate to an image list. And that'll be my shuffled deck array. Notice it does this very fast. Now I just want to be able to click on a card. So I'm going to click on the King of Hearts, and it tells me you clicked the King of Hearts. Here's the 10 of Spades, the Ace of Spades, the Ace of Clubs, and the 2 of Spades. When you're testing this, you want to make sure that you do the 2 of Spades and the Ace of Clubs, because those are the first and last images in the image list, other than the back of the card. The back of the card is index 0. As I shuffle, you're going to see that back of the card just momentarily just gives us a little animation. And I used a me.refresh after setting all the labels to index 0 to get that effect. So it's refreshing the screen before it then shuffles the cards. Here are the instructions for the project. Talk about the alignment using different arrays for this project. Screenshot, the assignment itself, and oftentimes you want to create different card games, and so shuffling the deck is the first step in creating a card game. Creating the user interface, I started with the image list and imported the cards that are provided to you in the Canvas course site. There are 53 images, including the back of the card is index 0, and then the card faces are indexes 1 through 52. I created each label as being 142 by 196 in size, so I had basically 2 pixels horizontally and vertically to allow for a single border around each label. I started by creating one label, linked it to the image list and set the image index to 0, and then copied and pasted that label and offset it a little bit from the first one. And then copied those 2 and pasted those 2, and then copied those 4 and pasted those 4, and so forth, until I got a row of 13 cards, each one alternating a little bit with the offset of high and low. Then I simply copied that row and pasted it 3 times, and the result is you get all 52 cards. I did name each one individually, so LBL card 1 through LBL card 52. I added a text box at the bottom. The reason I made it a text box rather than a label, and I made it a read-only text box, so that if you wanted to use the methodology of cycling through me.controls in a loop to place all of the labels in a label array, it would not include what would be a label at the bottom. It's a text box, so it doesn't pick that one up. There's also a button here, BTN Shuffle with the text shuffle, which shuffles our deck. That's the interface. Give you some tips on the code, showing you the 3 arrays that I created, a label array, an integer array, and a Boolean array. And the Boolean array is used to make sure that each card's only used once. The shuffled integer array is the list of all the image indices from 1 to 52, randomly placed in those 52 elements of 0 to 51. And then my card label is a label array, again with indices from 0 to 51, so 52 cards, each one being a label control. Remember, you have to populate that label in the form load event, and go back and watch that video on how to populate a class level object array. The 2 methodologies I showed, one was creating a temp array and then transferring all those temp objects to the class level array, or looking at me.controls and looking at all the controls that meet a particular type of object. And that works if all the objects of that type match what you're trying to put into the array. In shuffling the deck, I did 4 steps. I used a loop to set the image index of all the cards to 0, and did a me.refresh to show the back of the cards. It only happens for a split second, because then I'm using a loop to set all the used cards to false. That allows us to use all the cards over again. Using a do loop while nested in a for loop to randomly assign each card index to the shuffled array. And then finally, once that array is set, I use that array again in a for next loop to display each image index in each card label. To show which card they clicked, I created two class level arrays. One is suits as string, which is spades, hearts, diamonds, and clubs. And that's the order in which those images appear. And then the card value of ace, 2, 3, 4 through king. I put the ace at the beginning, which makes it easier to mathematically figure out which card they clicked, because you can use integer division and modulus operations from the image index to figure out which value of each array you want to pull from. When you test your project, make sure that visually every card appears once and no card appears twice. I'm going to suggest you pause here, and then the rest of the video I will show you my code review. For the user interface, I have a label named LBL card 1 and 52 of those. The last one is named LBL card 52. They each have the image list set to IMG cards. That's my image list. In that image list, I made the size 140 by 194 and then imported the collection of images into it as JPEGs. I set the depth 24-bit. No need to use 32 because there's nothing transparent in these images. If you use 32-bit, not a big deal. I have a button named BTN Shuffle, and at the bottom here is a text box named TXT Feedback, and I set the read-only property to true for that, and then for the text, entered shuffle the deck, then click any card. That's the user interface. So by the way, my form is 1220 by 790. Here's the code. I started with 3 arrays. One's a label array named card label, one's a integer array named shuffled, and one is a Boolean array named used card. The card label and shuffle have 52 elements. The used card has 53, and I made that so it corresponded to the indices of my image list, which has 53 images in it. The 0 is the card back, and we're not going to do anything with that. We're not going to use that in our distribution of cards, but it makes the math a little bit easier to include that here in the used cards. So the cards we're going to be concerned with are elements 1 through 52. And I mentioned there's 2 ways to then populate the card label array, because we can't do that until the form loads. One is to hard code all of those labels, 1 through 52, LBL card 1 through LBL card 52, into a temporary array, which is of type label, and then use a loop to transfer each element from temp to card label. If the only labels we have are our cards, then we can use a for each loop to go through all the controls in me.controls and look to see if the object is of type label. So if type of obj is label, then I'm going to add obj to card label IDX, and I want to increment IDX. So I start with IDX equals 0. That's my first element. In the end, it should be 51. Here's the code to shuffle the deck. I created IDX as an integer. This, of course, stands for index. IDX equals 0 to 51. I'm going to set the element of each of my card labels, setting that image index to 0. That's going to be the back of the card. So it sets all 52 cards to the back of the card, and then me.refresh refreshes the screen and shows them for really just a split second, because the rest of the code only takes about a second. My next loop for IDX equals 0 to 52. I'm going to set all of those used card elements to false. Now I could get by with 1 to 52 because the 0 never gets changed, but on the safe side, let's set 0 to 52 all to false. Then I'm going to shuffle my deck. And here I have an integer called next card num, and I'm going to go for IDX equals 1 to 52. We're going to ignore the 0, so we're not using that back of the card. So this is going to be the elements of my used cards. And then I have a do loop. I'm going to generate a random number between 1 and 52 and assign that to next card. And I'm going to look to see, has that next card been used? I'm going to loop while used card next element next card num. So if that's true, that card's been used, and I'll generate another random number. Otherwise, I'm going to set shuffled of idx minus 1. So again, we're starting with element 0 to next card. And I'm going to set the used card of next card num to true, so I don't use that card again. That will create my shuffled deck. And then I just need to display it in all the labels. So we have a loop to do that for idx equals 0 to 51. We're going to iterate through all of our labels in the card label array. So element idx.imageIndex equals whatever the shuffled element is of idx for that array. Those are basically two parallel arrays, card label and shuffled. And then my txt feedback will be click any card. Now, here's where I get the card that the user clicked. So this handles all 52 cards being clicked. Image index as integer equals sender.imageIndex. I want to know what the image index of the card or the label they clicked on. Two arrays, suits a string equals spades, hearts, diamonds, and clubs. That's the order of the images in the image list. And then my card value goes from ace to king. In the image list, the cards go from 2 to ace. I'm going to move the ace, in this case, to element 0, which will allow me to do a little bit of math with figuring out the card IDX of the card value. Suit IDX will be the element of my suits array that I want to use. That's going to equal image index or IMG IDX minus 1 and do an integer division of 13. So that way, if it's elements 2 through 13, it's going to give me a 0 because I'm subtracting 1. So it's actually going to be 1 through 12. And that'll give me the suit that I want to pull from the suits array. Then the card IDX is also an integer. It's going to be IMG IDX mod 13. That'll give me the card value from my card value array using card IDX as the element. And then my feedback is txt feedback.text equals, and I use an interpolated string, you clicked the, whatever the card value, card IDX was, of whatever the suit IDX element of suits was. Now I had to experiment a little bit with this IMG IDX minus 1 to make sure I got all the suits. When I first ran this, I didn't do that, and I clicked the ace of clubs, I got an out of bounds error, and it actually was giving me a 5th suit that didn't exist. So if we took this comment out here, I think it's about 53 lines of code, and then a couple blank lines in there as well. So about 50 lines of code to accomplish this project. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.